today, by no means least, will be Mr. Hodrien. You may remember David attended one of our club meetings last year where he treated us to a very interesting talk. Yeah, I know he's missing the marquee today, but there you can't have it always, can you? Now, David, you may recall, as chairman of Birmingham UFO Group, is also their lead investigator. Now, during this time, he's investigated hundreds of UFO reports and has a particular interest in contact experiences. He's been a regular speaker at UFO conferences on the subject of UFOs. He's written for UFO Truth magazine and has appeared on both radio and television. Now, today he's going to be speaking on the subject of UFOs and the music industry. So please make him welcome, Mr. Hodrien. Thank you very much. Here we go, guys. Strap yourself in. Hold on to something solid. Let's see if this works. So there we go. UFOs and the music industry. Sure, a few of that might recognise that. The most famous theme, shall we say, to do with the UFO subject, most famous UFO-related notes in history. Yes, as Steve said, I'm Dave Hodrien, the chairman for Birmingham UFO Group and the lead investigator. Been at it now for 10 years, and we've got 10th anniversary coming up in November this year. And it's a great privilege to be back to Swansea UFO Network to give this talk today for you all. It's a great honour to be invited to this conference. I hope you're having a great day so far, and I hope I don't let you down with the talk. So, can I have hands up for who was at my talk last year on a particular contact case? Okay, so yeah, about 50-50 split there. Yes, so I'm quite well known in the UFO community for dealing with abduction cases, contact cases. I've dealt with about 300 from around the world so far, and also hundreds of UFO sightings since 2007. Many of those reported to me historical cases that go right back to the 1950s. But today I'm speaking on a particular aspect of ufology, and that is how UFOs have been presented by the music industry. So yeah, really, in regards to music, ufology it's been interpreted by all aspects of our culture these days. You see it on adverts, you see breakfast cereals with little alien heads in, packs of crisps, everything across the board. And there's many films that are linked with the UFO subject in various ways, always have been. And I've seen a number of talks over the years related to UFO movies. But I figured another aspect of the way ufology is portrayed is through music and bands. And music's quite a big part of my life. I'm quite passionate. I can't play instruments, so the intro sequence lied when it said there were going to be live performances. I bet you were hoping I was going to get out a little guitar, play a few notes, but But I figured it was good to look into how UFOs have been portrayed by music over the years. So that's the theme of today's talk for you all. So without further ado, let's see what we've got ahead. So I'm going to start with a bit of music history, where it began, really, UFO-themed music. We'll then look at some bands that are entirely themed on the subject of UFOs and aliens, and they do exist. They're few and far between, but they are out there. Our next section will be a large section on alien inspiration, so essentially different bands and different artists who've used the ideas of UFOs and aliens in their music. And sometimes they may have had experiences, and that'll be our next musician encounters. I'll go over some actual experiences that musicians have had, and they sometimes then interpret that in the songs that they write and release. We'll have a few conclusions at the end. It's quite a lively talk. There's going to be numerous music videos and little audio clips, so feel free to clap your hands or dance or whatever you want to do. It's all good. So let's start with UFO music history. The earliest UFO song. Well, this is open to interpretation, but it's widely believed by the UFO community that the first song to ever speak on the UFO subject directly was a track by the Buchanan Brothers. And these were a country gospel band from 1944 to 1947. Interesting, that last date, we'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, they only went for a few years, and it went out via radio. And on the 16th of July in 1947, they recorded a track called When You See Those Flying Saucers, and they released that. Sorry, I say recorded, should be released really. Obviously they recorded it in the weeks leading up to that. And this song particularly speculated that the UFOs that people were seeing were linked with Judgment Day. They had religious connotations to them. So if you didn't behave, the aliens were going to come and get you and take you to hell. I've got a little clip here of their track, so enjoy. Let's see if this works. And that didn't work. Here we go.
You better pray to the Lord when you see those flying saucers. It may be the coming of the judgment day. It's a sign, there's no doubt, of the trouble that's about. So I say, my friend, you'd better start to pray. They're a terrifying sight as they fly on day and night. It's a warning that we'd better mend our ways. You'd better pray to the Lord when you see those flying saucers. It may be the coming of the judgment day.
So there we go, yeah. I think that definitely deserves a re-release. I think the radio company should put that back out to the public. And even back then in the 40s, this song highlights the public's general interest for the UFO subject. And they're not the only band, but it's widely believed that they were the first. Now, I mentioned the date, and of course, we've already had Colin speak about the Roswell incident earlier on. So the timing of the song is very interesting indeed, and it relates to two UFO-related incidents from back then. So two big UFO incidents occurred in mid-1947. The first of those is the famous UFO sighting by Kenneth Arnold, and secondly, of course, we have the Roswell crash. Both of these incidents were reported by the general media and were out there. So yeah, on the 24th of June, Kenneth Arnold's UFO sighting is a photo of Kenneth here with one of the numerous craft that he saw. So they're kind of like these crescent-shaped objects that he saw performing these incredible manoeuvres. And he witnessed them over Mount Rainier while he was a pilot and he was flying his plane. Very, very famous case. So yeah, 9 UFOs seen from the aircraft. And when he spoke to the news reporters after having this incredible sighting after he landed, he described this erratic motion that they were performing. He said it was like a saucer being skipped across water. And it's widely believed that that's where the phrase flying saucer came from, which is interesting. It had never been really used before to that point, but after that, people started to refer to these objects of being seen as flying saucers. Then, of course, we've got the Roswell crash. I've given entire talks on Roswell before, a very, very detailed case. So it was publicly announced in the paper on the 8th of July. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is the absolutely famous news article, RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. That was the first news report that went out. After that, it was soon covered up, and they put out later statements saying it was a weather balloon. But yeah, the evidence points towards it definitely not being that, as anybody who's looked into Roswell will soon, I'm surely, agree with. So the question is, was there inspiration for this song that they released one of these two well-publicised events? It seems very, very likely. It seems a bit too much of a coincidence, if not, because it was within weeks of those events happening. So we move on now to a new subgenre of music began in the 1950s. It was the emergence of a genre of music called space rock, which was sort of psychedelic, sci-fi themed tracks, rock, sort of psychedelic rock tracks. I've got a couple of examples. In 1956, gentlemen Bill Buchanan and Dickie Goodman, they released this album called The Flying Saucer. And essentially what this was, it's what's known as a mashup, which is where they'd essentially mix different bits of spoken word with kind of little musical snippets out of well-known songs. So if you like, a bit like the War of the Worlds that some of you will be familiar with, Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, so mixing in spoken with music. I've got a little clip from it here. There we go.
We interrupt this record to bring you a special bulletin. The reports of a flying saucer hovering over the city have been confirmed. The flying saucers are real. That was the Clatters recording Too Real. We switch you now to our on-the-spot reporter downtown.
Come on, baby, let's go downtown.
Take it away, John Cameron.
This is John Cameron downtown. Pardon me, madam, would you tell our audience what would you do if the saucer were to land? Thank you. And now the thing, gentlemen, there.
What I'm gonna do.
So yeah, you get the general idea, and the whole thing went on over an hour and a half, so I think it would turn any sane person mad. Not amount of time listening to that, but that was essentially the whole album went on that. There's another example, Billy Lee Riley. It was a rockabilly band. It was going on right up to 2009, but began in 1956. And his first major hit was this song called Flying Saucer Rock and Roll, which some of you may have heard. He released that in 1957. There's a nice little album cover for it with some flying discs at the top right. So we move on now to some UFO-themed bands. So yeah, as I said, there are bands out there that are entirely themed on the UFO subject. And you may recognise those guys, maybe not. Star Wars, there's the Cantina Band. So we're going to start with S.U.F.O.N. Very, very interesting group. They're an alternative rock group from Scotland. And they were formed in 1983, and they're still going today. Still an active band. And here they are at the top right. They're the UK's only band that's entirely themed on the UFO subject, as far as I'm aware. CE4 stands for Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, which is the abduction phenomena. On our scale, we've got Close Encounters of the First Kind, which is distant sighting. Second kind is where there's trace marks, sort of physical evidence left behind. Third is, of course, the famous one, seeing beings. Fourth kind is the contact phenomena, where people have direct interaction with said entities. Now, the band have got a very strong interest in the subject, and they regularly attend conferences and skywatches, and I've met them at numerous events over the years. And they've also had various UFO and ET related sightings themselves, some of them very, very interesting indeed. Obviously too much to go into right now, but the details on their experiences can be found on the band's website. They've got a couple of alien grey mascots. I don't know who this chap is on the right there. So in 2009, that was from the Weird Paranormal Conference down in Wiltshire. It's me with one of their alien mascots, and here's a photo from one of their live gigs with them on stage. They've released 3 albums so far: Abduction, Visions, and One Dream. They've also released another EP with a couple of tracks on, and there's a interesting side project that they did called The Shadow of Man, which again had long-spoken dialogue in it, talking about UFO incidents. And the most interesting of their albums is the first one, in fact, is Abduction. It's a concept album entirely themed on an abduction experience. And again, there's spoken word through it, mixed in with songs telling the story of someone's abduction. Yeah, you'll hear more on that in a second. So yeah, there's the front cover for it. Now, the first time I released this talk to the general public, I contacted S.U.F.O.N and I asked whether they'd like to be a part of the talk and come and speak directly. And because they're right up in Scotland, it's quite a trek down to Birmingham, and they said that wasn't going to be possible, but they'd put together a video recorded interview for me. So I sent them a bunch of questions, and they responded in kind. And I've got that interview for you now. It's about 7 minutes long, but it's a fascinating insight into the world of UFO-themed music bands.
Hi Dave, and all at the Birmingham UFO group meeting tonight. Sorry we can't be there, we'd love to be there to tell you the truth, obviously, right? But we'll try and answer the questions that Dave's been asking. Make it entertaining and very truthful as much as we can. Our interest in UFOs began in the late 70s. We were actually into astronomy about that time as well. And there were some objects in the sky making strange movements that took us on, got us interested, full-time UFOs, that was it, begun.
We also started buying up a lot of UFO books and reading newspaper cuttings and magazines, etc. Even joined a few UFO groups and attended meetings. We were really just keen to get as much info as we could about the subject and find out what was going on.
The band was formed by musicians who were also interested in the UFO subject. You know, it seemed a good idea to mix the two. We were doing some cover versions for a while. Thought, nah, let's just do the stuff we're interested in. And the first couple of songs, UFOs, that was it, started. We came up with the name CE4 from J. Allen Hynek's classifications of UFO sightings. It's simple as that, really. And the fourth kind being the abduction, you know, of a witness. And we thought, hey, that'll do us fine, that one. So it's CE4, that was it.
At the time, this was a relatively new term, but there was an increasing number of people experiencing abduction, and that was really something we were keen and interested in as well.
The small greys that join us on stage also attend conferences, meetings, even speaking to witnesses, etc. They like the grey standing there for some reason. He's actually slightly green, this one, but he is a grey. They were made from small mannequins, really, and lots of polyfiller, let's say, and that was it. Hopefully we got them looking quite good.
There's 3 different greys we had at one point. There was Gabriel, who's our main mascot, if you like. Bellator, who's the kind of warrior type. There was another one called the Doc, who sadly disappeared quite a few years ago. So if Doc, if you're watching this just now, and you know, please get in touch and we can get back together again.
I think he phoned home, did he?
He must have phoned home.
It could have been that, right. Anyway, he was a cracker, but we lost him, right? That was it. The idea for the abduction album came from speaking to witnesses, as simple as that, really. Some of them were telling horrific tales, strange things happening to them all times of day, night, whatever. We thought, how can you possibly put this into music? You know, story, dialogue, music, lyrics, etc. And that's what we tried to do, and it came out no bad. So we're quite happy with that.
The UFO community have been very supportive and been absolutely fantastic with us. what makes it really all worthwhile for us is when people come up to us and tell us how our songs and music bring back the emotions of their experiences.
It's like the Abduction album. Some have actually told us how close it is to the truth, what actually happened to them, you know. All our gigs have been great for different reasons, but our favourite one has to be the Falkirk Town Hall in 1994. This was at the height of the UFO sightings in the Bonnybridge area. This obviously made it good as well. And it was arranged to help answer questions locals had about sightings of UFOs within the area. So, good fun. Good.
Yeah, it was a great gig, and there was over 800 people attended that night, which I believe is one of the biggest single event crowds in the UK, even up till now. Yeah, there was a good crowd at Cradle Hill Skywatch that night, and we all certainly saw something very unusual that no one seemed to have an explanation for. We believe it was some kind of craft, and it was possibly observing us at distance.
We did capture the lights in a video camera, but we're yet to make it public, and that should be quite soon actually. It's very interesting. We've had quite a few experiences over the years, mainly UFOs, possible ET sighting, and plenty of lights in the sky. Some of these close up were quite good, but the best one of course was July 1985, north of Glasgow near the hills. Brian?
Well, basically we were out sky watching one night. It's in July, so it's quite a mild night. We had binoculars with us, like we always do with sky watches, just to make sure if we do spot anything we can get a good view of it. But through the binoculars, this thing filled the field of vision. So if you imagine you're looking at that sort of side circle, this thing was taking up the whole width of the binoculars. And there was no mistaking what it was. It was a classic flying saucer shape, believe it or not. It's just bizarre to see that when you were looking at, you know, people were reporting black triangles and all sorts of stuff, to see suddenly this wee stumpy looking flying saucer. It was an amber kind of colour. It seemed to shimmer, which we were not sure whether that was a kind of heat thing from it, or was it a semi-transparency thing going on. It was very hard to tell what it was doing, but it was very unusual. It had this kind of skipping kind of motion, like a pebble across water as it descended over the city, and it grew.
Our plans for the future are basically keep doing what we're doing, you know, meeting witnesses, studying ufology, writing music for ufology, sometimes paranormal stuff as well, and comes into it as well, but on the whole now we're working with Gabriel's view, which, to be honest with you, is a cracker. But like anything else like that, it's taking time, you know.
We hope to finish Gabriel's view next year, so keep up to date with what's happening there by visiting our website and following us on Twitter.
Well, you know, government, military people never really identify themselves, you know, but you sort of see people at meetings and things like that, and some of them try and make out their witnesses to see what you'll say, and they've got big, deep experiences that have happened to them, you know. I guess some of them are probably military, or police, or whatever you like, you know.
Plus also one of the guys in the band had an experience of a man in black, quite close proximity. So we don't really know what men in black have. Could they be military personnel or government agents or possibly aliens? We don't know. Don't really know.
If I met an ET face to face and had one question for him, or it would possibly be, why are you here?
I suppose if I was to ask a question, I would have to ask where are you from. That's one of the questions I'm sure a lot of us would want to have answered. Well, thanks for listening. We hope you found it interesting. It's been fun for us. If you want to keep up to date with the band and what we're doing, don't forget to visit our website. You can follow us on Twitter. We have a Facebook page, so all the details of where we are and how you find us will be on the next slide.
Well, bye for now, and keep watching the skies.
Bye.
that's CU4, yeah. And the question halfway through about the sighting in 2009, that was my own personal UFO encounter. I was there with them, which is why I asked them, because we were both witnesses to that. I don't have time to go into that in detail at the moment during the talk, but if you ask me about it later on today, I'm sure I'll share the details with you. Okay, so let's have a look at some other UFO-themed bands, looking at elsewhere in the planet now, primarily America. So, band Element 115, a classic rock group from Phoenix in Arizona, which is, of course, the location of the famous 1997 Phoenix Lights incident, one of the biggest and most impressive UFO encounters ever. The band name actually comes from Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar claimed to have worked at Area 51, and he claimed that they were back engineering these alien spacecraft utilising an unknown element of the periodic table, element 115, unknown pentium, he claimed it was called. And of course, that very controversial, Bob Lazar's claims. Some people believe is the real deal, other people not necessarily. Well worth looking into. The band of a virtual grey who's on stage on a screen in the background, there he is, and he taps along in time with the music, which is kind of cool. They got it rigged up to the sound, so as they play, he's drumming for them virtually, which is pretty cool. They've released numerous songs themed on both UFOs and political change, New World Order, that sort of thing. Here's another one for you, Unidentified Funk Object, superb name. They're a funk band from Nova Scotia. And they launched their first album at the Shag Harbour Festival. That's a yearly festival that's held there to commemorate a massive incident that took place in 1963. Again, very, very big multiple witness UFO sighting. The majority of their songs are themed on the UFO subject. And the first track on their album is down here, Unidentified Funk Object, Space Funk. Space Funk Party. It's based on the actual incident itself, so well worth a listen. Now, Edison's Children, not necessarily a UFO-themed band, but their initial album was entirely themed on abduction, so I've included those here as well. It's a side project by Marillion, one of the most famous progressive rock bands from the UK, and their guitarist Pete Traverse and Eric Blackwood worked on this Edison's Children side project. And the initial concept album, called In the Last Waking Moments, is themed entirely on an abduction experience all the way through. There's the front cover for it. And the single off that, A Million Miles Away, actually reached the top 40 back in 2012. They've released other albums since, but they haven't been UFO-themed albums. But it's still a very interesting album to have a listen to. And afterwards, if any of you don't bother writing notes or anything, you can come and speak to me if there's anything you're particularly interested in. I'll send on the details so you'll be able to have a listen. Well, so let's have a look at our next section, Alien Inspiration. So these are bands that have put out particular tracks themed on the UFO subject, which are sometimes followed on from their own experiences. So we start with a band already discussed today by Colin. Second time in one day here the Trogs mentioned. It's great. As soon as you mentioned it earlier on, Colin, I was like, there we go. So an English rock group that have been going since 1964. And, of course, the lead vocalist, who Colin's already spoken of, Reg Presley, he's got a very deep interest in both UFOs and the crop circle phenomena, crop formation phenomena, I should say. And in 1994, he hosted a cable TV series called the Reg Presley UFO Show. I've got a clip there for you, but in the interest of time, I'll come past that. So he claimed to have obtained footage of this metallic disc over the crops, been sent him. I don't believe that's ever been publicly released, but he was making various claims around 1994 that he'd been sent this very impressive footage, but nobody really knows what happened to that. I don't know if you know anything more about that, Colin. And in 2002, he released this book, Wild Things They Don't Tell Us, which, again, we've got a direct link there back to the talk earlier on with the alien autopsy. Fascinating information in that book. It's very good. Here's a quote from him from Wild Things They Don't Tell Us. As yet, the study of crop formations and ufology is not a science. Therefore, although some scientists may be looking into these phenomena, they cannot be seen to be doing so by their fraternity. Behind the scenes, work is being carried out and some questions are being answered. We may still have a long way to go. I do not believe anybody can spend 12 years, as I have, studying crop formations and the UFO phenomena without forming strong opinions on the whole subject, although the trial, as it were, is still ongoing and the evidence still coming in. I think it's a fantastic statement which pretty much sums up ufology. They released a greatest hits album, and the cover for that album was the band standing in the crop with a classic silver disc over them. I believe that's their only album cover that had a UFO theme to it. So another classic artist here, Jimi Hendrix. He also had a great interest in UFOs and extraterrestrials, and was especially interested in making contact with these beings and communication going on between them and the human race. There's numerous songs he's released which don't directly relate to UFOs in terms of the wording, but you can tell that they're veiled references to the subject and his interest in it. One of his albums got Axis Bold as Love. It opened with an announcer talking about flying saucers. I've got a little clip for that here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to radio station EXP. Tonight we are featuring an interview with a very peculiar-looking gentleman who goes by the name of Mr. Paul Caruso on the dodgy subject of are there or are there not flying saucers, or UFOs. Please, Mr. Caruso, could you give us your regarded opinion on this nonsense about spaceships and even space people?
Thank you. As you all know, we just can't believe everything we see and hear, can we? Now, if you will excuse me, I must be on my way.
I don't believe it.
And as far as I'm aware, the speeding up and slowing down of that clip was completely intentional. That track, that intro track there, is immediately followed by the song called Up From the Skies, which expresses his interest about wishing to make contact. It's pretty much the only song that's got directly focused lyrics. On several occasions, UFOs were actually observed while Jimi Hendrix was actually playing on stage at gigs, and numerous accounts of that, one of which I'll go into in more detail later. And he once told a New York Times reporter that he was from Mars. Obviously, musicians say a lot of things. Carlos Santana, his friend, claimed that he witnessed Jimmy playing his guitar without touching the strings. So there's these odd, bizarre little tales that point towards something very interesting. And certain people out there have actually speculated that Jimi Hendrix was, in fact, an ET in human form. It's open to interpretation, of course. But it's interesting that certain people out there actually genuinely believe that. Here's a clip from this is his some of the band members. Jimmy was able to make visible music entities from the ethereal world of sound, and on numerous occasions he actually performed them for us. Jimmy would take us into a room and he would perform an act that would summon up entities that we were able to see. Of course, this was mind-boggling to us. As far as I'm aware, drugs were not involved in this. It's Jimi Hendrix. That was his background singers, Tahaka and Tundra E. Aline. And they were the ones that made these very interesting claims. Next we move on to somebody who needs no introduction, of course, the legendary David Bowie, who sadly lost to us quite recently. And one of his very famous albums, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust. This was the album that propelled him into the mainstream, I would say, the one that was greatly accepted by the public community. It was his 5th studio album. And it was a very interesting concept album about a rock star who was a direct contact with these ET beings, and they were essentially talking through him. So when he was talking, saying the words of the songs, it was directly from these beings. That's him as Ziggy down there with the famous lightning strike makeup on his face. The album was very, very interesting and explored lots of controversial issues, including politics, drug use, and sexuality. And it also features truly one of the most famous, well-known songs by him, Starman. And I'm sure you all know how this one goes, but I'm going to play it anyway.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He's told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children use it. Let the children use it. Let all the children do it.
Great song. So yeah, he also released a number of other very relevant songs that were linked with UFOs, including Space Odyssey, Life on Mars, Loving the Alien, Looking for Satellites, and I Took a Trip on a Gemini Spaceship. So it was a theme that repeated throughout his musical career. Again, he had a very big interest in UFOs since an early age, and claimed to have had many sightings while on Skywatchers. And it's widely known that when he was giving interviews on television, he would actually stop mid-interview, he'd actually pause and go over to the window and look out to see if there were any UFOs up in the sky. So I'm sure the interviewers absolutely loved. And he also played an alien in the film The Man Who Fell to Earth, so he actually acted as an alien, and of course as the Goblin King too. Not alien related, but a superb movie, Labyrinth. Here he is in recent years, and there's a superb quote by him. I really do support the theory wholeheartedly, as in the UFO theory, but for my writing I used it merely as imagery, as symbolic generally of some kind of spiritual search. And it was the idea of whatever that Godhead or the higher being or whatever that could be. It manifests itself in my songs as sources or aliens or otherness. So really it was used as a subtext more than anything else. It wasn't used as hardware. But yeah, as I say, he had a lifelong interest in the subject. So he had the band UFO. Of course, they had to be included, did they not? A UK hard rock band formed in 1969. And the band's original title was Hocus Pocus, and they soon changed that to UFO, several months after forming, in fact. Now, a lot of people think the name UFO is because of their interest in the subject. It's not at all. It was actually named after the club where they got their big break in the music industry, which was the UFO Club in London, which I believe is still there today. And that was where they were first noticed. So they honoured their band name after that. However, they have released numerous albums with very interesting artwork and music and album titles that are definitely related to the UFO subject. We've got UFO 2, 1 Hour Space Rock. This middle one appears Phenomena with a lady outside a house and there's a flying disc up in the sky. This is UFO Visitors in the Night. This one down here, Making Contact, with some naked lady on. There we go. And also the Visitor as well. With an old picture with some lights coming in from outside. So yeah, you can see ongoing themes relating to the subject. Silver Bird was one of the first tracks on the album UFO 2, and it was called Flying, and it's all about discovering a crashed saucer coming across that. Here's some of the lyrics from it. This morning as I walked, I gazed out across my land, lying there all still, lying there upon the sand. A big silver bird had planted itself into the ground. And being the kind of person who isn't very easily alarmed, decided to take a walk to see just what I could find. Walked around the walls, tapping to find me a door, looking for a window to see if I could find out more. Big silver bird, let me inside your plane. Want to fly so high, fly me high away. So yeah, obviously a direct link there, and a very interesting song. Another classic band here, Klaatu. Is a psychedelic rock group from Canada, and they started in 1973 and continued to 82. And the band Klaatu is named after the alien robot from the famous UFO-related movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. Absolutely superb flick. And they had numerous space and alien themed songs that were kind of essentially space rock was continuing through into the 70s in a big way, and these would definitely be classed as that. Their most well-known track, Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft. And this was themed around an incident called World Contact Day, where people suggested that everybody should meditate en masse and try to make contact with our alien visitors. And it's not known to what degree of success. I'm sure some people claim to have had experiences on that day. I've got a little clip from it here for you. If you'd like to meditate for 20 seconds and try to make contact, go right ahead. interesting. You can find out more about World Contact Day and what happened surrounding that on various places online. So some of you may recognise the name Bruce Dickinson. Bruce Dickinson is the lead vocalist for the famous band Iron Maiden, heavy metal band from the UK, of course. And he also does solo work. And it's not widely known, but Bruce actually has a very big interest in the subject of UFOs. Sometimes on some of his live gigs, he'll wear this T-shirt. It's got a grey's face and it says "Not bad for a human" written under it. There he's wearing the T-shirt. One of their recent albums, The Final Frontier, was themed on space and aliens. That's their mascot, Eddie, who's a zombie, and they've dressed him up as this kind of alien creature for the front title of that album. Now, with his solo work, he released this album called Tyranny of Souls, and there's various tracks on that are themed around the ET subject. Very interesting now. There's Abduction, which is about the abduction phenomena, a very interesting video, and also about the power that these ET beings have over the human race. There was one called Soul Intruders, which covered the concept of aliens essentially possessing humans directly and then walking amongst us. And there was also a song called Navigate the Seas of the Sun, which was inspired by Eric von Daniken and the ancient aliens theory, which I'm sure many of you have looked into. I've got a clip here from Abduction, and this, I promise, folks, this is as loud and as metal as it's going to get.
I wake in sweat, you've got to steal my life away. Some strange electric roll of artificial day. The power breakers close, the grid of darkness falls. Shining, gleaming black as night, burning all the light.
So yeah, you can have a watch of that video on YouTube, and it's very, very interesting. It's got Bruce undergoing an abduction experience. There's men in black. There's a little alien greys in jars and all sorts of stuff in that. So very interesting. Sean Ryder, another famous face, is the vocalist for the Happy Mondays and Black Grape, and he had a lifelong interest in UFOs and aliens. There's a great quote from him: "It's not that I want to believe, it's impossible not to," which I think is fantastic. Actually, I might get that put on my tombstone. I haven't decided yet. It's a good one. He's written a book detailing his own sightings called "What Planet Am I On?" Which is a very interesting read. And he also hosted a documentary series, which some of you may have watched, Sean Ryder on UFOs. And he wasn't taking the mick with it or anything. He has a genuine interest in it, and he was going around speaking with key witnesses and finding out some very interesting details. We'll move back to metal temporarily with a band called Hypocrisy. These are a band from Sweden, a death metal band formed in 1990. Not that well known, but they're absolutely fascinated by the UFO subject, and that comes out through many of their album covers, which you can see 6 examples here. So as you can see, especially this one here, the Rival, Newb's Greys coming out of Craft. But you can see the links with the contact subject, so people undergoing different experiences with that. So yeah, they're very, very heavy. But the lyrics, if you can just about hear them, do come out as being linked with UFOs. I've got a small, short interview here with the
well, I told Wes what the album was about, and I just mainly wanted him to do something exclusive for us. And yeah, it's a little bit, since I'm totally into this cover-up stories, no matter if it's about, UFOs or, black projects that governments has, or secret society or Illuminati and stuff like that. I just fed him all the stuff, and he just created this cover for that.
Some of their album songs are directly themed on the UFO subject. We've got this one here that wrote about Roswell 47. Their freedom was taken away as they crashed to be abducted for research. The experiment will make sure they won't last. Are there still some alive ones? The incident was shut down because national security was in jeopardy. They say the weather balloon crashed, but we know it's bullshit. We have the right to know what really happened in Roswell 47. There's another example, request denied. It can no longer be denied. The government's cover-up frights your life far too long. Keep your mouth shut of what you have seen, or the body parts will spread around for trying to prove the missing time. So taking a very dark, very metal themed view of the subject, but you can see the links there towards cover-ups and specific incidents. Ah, yeah, Blink-182. Yeah, this one's been in the news lately quite a bit. So, Blink-182, an American pop-punk band, and they've been around since 1992. The singer is now also the lead vocalist for Angels and Airwaves. Aliens Exist is one of their tracks. It's themed on alien abduction. I'll skip past that for now. The singer, Tom DeLonge, has always been fascinated by the subject of UFOs. There's a photo of Tom. So a lot of people don't take him that seriously because of the kind of jokey songs that Blink-182 put out, but he's very, very interested behind the scenes. And he runs a paranormal website called Strange Times. And he's appeared on Larry King alongside James Fox, who's the director of famous UFO-related documentaries, I Know What I Saw and Out of the Blue, which for me are two of the best documentaries created on the subject of UFOs. Now, yeah, on to more recent things. In 2016, he released a very interesting book called Secret Machines, Chasing Shadows. It's the first part of a trilogy of books. Has anybody read Secret Machines? Anybody here read that? Yeah? No? Okay, so what it is, it's a novel, essentially. And so, however, he claimed to have been in touch with very, very high-level sources in the US military, high-level generals who'd worked at Area 51 and the head of Lockheed Martin and other people. And he claims that the book that he's put out is essentially a story, but a lot of the details in there are based on real life. Now, he claimed that his sources said he couldn't release it straight up. He had to release it in this form. Now, a lot of people were thinking, this sounds a bit bogus. Anybody could make claims like that, just to sell their book. However, many of you will be familiar with WikiLeaks. And last year, they released some emails that John Podesta had been having with Tom DeLonge. And it turns out that Tom was working directly with John Podesta and Hillary Clinton in trying to bring around disclosure in America. I'm very, very interested. And Tom actually mentioned the names of said contacts that he'd been working with in those emails to John Podesta. So it seems very, very likely that he was actually truthful in having these contacts. Now, he was also presented with the Researcher of the Year award at the UFO Congress earlier this year, back in February, which some people in the UFO community felt was bad and felt that his celebrityism had kind of partially led to that award. However, he has been doing a lot of research, so maybe it's truly justified. It's interesting, though, some people think that maybe he's been planted false information and he's being used as disinformation to the public because of his celebrity status. That's entirely possible. So you have to be very, very wary when somebody of such status gets told all this information to pass on to the public. To be very concerned with whether all of that is strictly true or is it a cover for something else entirely. Back in late February, around the time he got the award, he also claimed there would be a big announcement from him regarding the UFO subject to some extent. Now, he said within the next 60 days, which ironically brings it up to about a couple of weeks ago. Hasn't happened yet. He hasn't released this big announcement. Hello.
He's just released a trailer about a new DVD he's bringing out with John Podesta and a couple of others. So look out for that.
Maybe that's the announcement. Maybe maybe the announcement is the trailer, and maybe the actual information is in that DVD. We'll have to wait and see on that. That's interesting. Okay, another metal band here, progressive metal band called Tool. They're from Los Angeles. And their drummer, Danny Carey, and also the manager for their website, this guy called Blair McKenzie, they've got a huge interest in the UFO subject, always have. And they regularly mention it on the band newsletters. So if you go on the website for Tool, if you go to their newsletters, you'll hear them talking about metaphysical concepts and UFOs quite regularly on there to quite a good level of depth. That's a photo of Blair there. They've both had numerous UFO sightings at locations, including the famous base Area 51. I'll go into some of those in a bit. And there's also there's some suggestion that Blair himself may be an alien abductee, which again I'll cover in a bit. They've released a song called Rosetta Stone on one of their albums, which is probably one of the deepest music songs ever released on the Contact subject. Very, very deep, complex lyrics. Quite frightening. It's essentially just an abductee undergoing an experience and just all the fear and confusion that goes on with that. Very certainly worth listening to. And they also released this interesting song called Fate de Oyad. And there were spoken words in the background of that song that were from the famous call to Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM. Now, some of you may be familiar with this, but essentially a gentleman called claiming to be flying towards Area 51 in an aircraft. He sounded very, very scared. He was talking about reptilians. He was talking about government takeover by ETs, all sorts of stuff. And he claimed he was going to go across the line, and then all of a sudden it went dead. Now, the interesting thing with that radio show is they actually cut the signal to the feed, which they said was very, very hard to do and would have gone outside the realms of it just being a hoax. So it seems that somebody from outside didn't like what was going on with that broadcast and actually cut the feed for several minutes. So you can look into that online. It's far too much to go into detail. And again, there's two sides to every story, because there's some people who think it was, a complete well-constructed hoax, but very interesting nonetheless. One of their albums called Opiate has got this hybrid-like priest character on the front. You can certainly see it looks very grey-like with a very large almond-shaped hyzer. And they were also arrested at Area 51. Believe it or not, members of the band Tool, they were the first people to get arrested for crossing the line at Area 51 officially in April 1995. This is fascinating, so I will play this for you.
Okay, so one night I go over to the storied loft where I believe every Tool song in existence was written, arranged. Every single one of them. And I go over there and I convinced Danny to go out there with me. Hey, was that your first time?
That was the first time.
Okay, so we've got a good crew. I got Danny, but unfortunately Tool this is 1995 in April. I don't know what they're working on. They're working on something. They're writing, so we get a late start. And this late start that we get, I don't think we left LA until 9 o'clock at night. That was to become of importance. So anyway, we get Mother Goose, another friend of ours. That's what we'll call him. And we go out there.
Hobo erectus.
Yes, we get out there. That's another story. We'll get to that. We get out there late, and instead of checking in the town of Rachel, where I would hear the latest scoop of what's going on, we proceed directly to the perimeter. And once we start climbing up the lower ridges towards Freedom Ridge, first of all, I see that all my reflective ribbons marking the trail are gone, which that wasn't unusual because the security personnel would do that, of course, take that down every day. But everything looked different to me. The whole thing just had a really strange look to it. It's pitch black. Danny's wandering up. I think I may have said, I just don't understand. This just doesn't look right. There's something not right. Next thing you know, Danny and I are standing there, and I tell you, we hear a voice. Gentlemen, you're going to jail. This guy is like inches away from us. This guy
over the line.
With all this night vision equipment, and all hell broke loose. We were forced down onto the ground, guns to our heads, automatic weapons. It's freezing cold out there. I remember that.
So yeah, some of the people since have also done that, cross the line. It's a big no-no. It really is. I've been out to the base, and we were warned to getting any closer than a couple of 100 yards is bad news. We were being watched the entire time. Another rock group here, alternative rock group from Seattle since 1994, the Foo Fighters. And they're named after the famous UFOs that were seen back in the Second World War by pilots on all sides of the conflict. This down here is an actual photograph of some Foo Fighters taken from an aircraft, and there were essentially these glowing orbs of light that followed along after the planes for a length of time, sometimes displayed interesting manoeuvres that they appeared to be under direct control. The Brits thought the Germans were using them as some sort of spying technology, and opposite sides thought it was British. It was only afterwards that they realised that it was neither. That these things were from elsewhere. There's the band there. The drummer and the vocalist Dave Grohl has got an interest in the UFO subject. So even though most of their songs aren't really linked with UFOs, is still there, that link through the band's name, of course. Is Dave. Around that time, I recorded the first Foo Fighters tape. That became the first record. I was reading a lot of books on UFOs, Not only is it a fascinating subject, but there's a treasure trove of band names in those UFO books. So since I recorded the first record by myself, playing all the instruments, but I wanted people to think it was a group, I figured the Foo Fighters, World War II term for UFOs, might lead people to believe that it was more than just one guy. So should have got it Foo Fighter, really. And on 16th of July in 2005, the band also played a concert at the Walker Air Force Base in Roswell, which I'm sure was really good fun. Head Planet Earth here. They're a rap metal band from California, formed in 1994. Now, with the hip hop community, hip hop music, a lot of the songs are usually quite deep in terms of the vocals and lyrics, and they also seem to be very, very passionate about what they believe in. So there's quite a lot of examples of hip hop songs talking about the UFOs or the control of the world by the New World Order. Their lyrics have always been very strongly focused on different political issues. I.F.O. off their first album, their first EP, Church of Realities, is an absolutely fascinating track all about UFOs. And there's also a track on there called Stay Ready. And then Colin earlier on mentioned Clifford Stone, who high-level military witness. He claimed to be part of a special project to go to crash retrievals and take the debris and bodies away. And their song starts with that. It also released Neuroboot Intro and Planet X on New World Orphans. Is all about the Planet X theory, which some of you will be familiar with. Devin Townsend, I'll skip to the next section if that's okay. It's just another metal artist. He's got a tattoo on his arm of grey. He's also one of my favourite musical artists, definitely worth looking into. A Siltoid up the top. This is an alien mascot. It's got a reptilian type creature that comes down to Earth to take Earth's coffee beans, which he uses to power his interdimensional spacecraft. It's way out stuff. Robbie Williams here as well. Ongoing interest in UFOs and conspiracy theories. In 2006, his tour, Close Encounters, obviously had the name, and some of the features on stage were loosely linked with UFOs. It's widely known that in 2007 he left the musical industry a while to explore the world of UFOs in more depth. And he met with many famous witnesses and researchers from around the world. Sadly, didn't come down Bufog. Here he is with a random guy. I have no idea. Anybody? And he's also released a song called Arizona, which is themed on UFOs. And he stated to the media in 2013 that he actually wanted to cease his musical career entirely and become a UFO investigator. It seems that hasn't happened, because here we are 4 years on. However, he has still got an interest in it. He made plans to buy this place, White Rock Island in California. Believe it or not, Robbie Williams actually wanted to buy this for the purpose of turning it into an observatory to film the sky and attempt to capture UFOs on camera. This is the true story of Robbie Williams that most of the media will not have told you. This is a recent statement. Here you go, from February 2017, just to prove that it wasn't just a phase he was going through. If I have any downtime, I'm on the internet looking for new stuff, but all is quiet on the UFO front, and it's been for a long time. There have been no major sightings of anything that's gone on for quite a while. So it's talking really, there haven't been any kind of world-scale incidents in recent years. But yeah, UFO sightings are far from stopped, otherwise I'd be out of business. I'll skip past Amplifier. Yeah, I've got a lot of interest of time. We'll skip past that. So yeah, we'll move on to our next section of the talk, which is musician encounters. So now, rather than, I don't know who that guy is, I've never seen him before in my life. So maybe that's where Elvis ended up, on another planet, walking around with some weird cactus shapes behind him. So instead of looking at a UFO experience and how that was influenced with the music, we're going to look at it from the other angle now. We're going to talk about the actual experiences that those musicians have had. And let's start with the big guy himself, Elvis Presley. Now, it's not widely known, but there was actually a UFO sighting at Elvis's birth, believe it or not. A glowing blue object with bright blue light was observed over the house in Mississippi at the time of his birth, which is very interesting indeed. Here's a statement from Vernon Presley, from his dad, Vernon. As I looked around, son, I noticed something strange. The whole area around the house was lit up with a blue light. It seemed to surround the house. And just at this moment, the wind stopped blowing. It was so still you could hear a pin drop. That's fascinating, isn't it? That Elvis's birth, there was a UFO experience going on. And you may look into that. Another sighting that he's had from Mississippi, as his friend Larry Geller talking about this, as part of his spiritual training, Elvis liked to go outside in the middle of the night and spend hours watching the movement of the planets. One night he saw a UFO. He pointed it out to Sonny West, who at first thought it must be an aeroplane or helicopter, but the vehicle made no sound. They watched its approach through tree limbs as it passed over the house towards the front lawn. Elvis told Sonny to go get Jerry Schilling so he could see it too. When the two came bounding out the front door, Elvis was nowhere to be seen. For a moment, they were worried he'd been abducted. Then they noticed him 3 doors away, staring towards the south, where the craft had disappeared. Fascinating. It's a little grey, just as always. Flying saucer was also observed at Graceland by Elvis and his father, but there's not that many details that are known about that. It moved erratically at extremely fast speed, and we've got this statement here from Elvis himself about this. My father was so moved by the sighting of that craft that he shared with me an occurrence that happened at my birth. There we go, we're referring back to the previous experience. I have a stillborn brother, and at the time of our birth, my father said there was a canopy of light over the house. Its aura lighted his way well outside the house in Tupelo. My father was amazed. He had never spoken of it until that night we saw the unidentified flying object together. So it's fascinating. They had a later UFO sighting, and it was at that time that his father recounted what had happened at his birth. Now we talked about Jimi Hendrix and his songs earlier on, but Jimmy's had experiences of his own. One of the ones was this UFO that was seen over his concert in Maui, island of Maui, and he actually referred to it over the mic during his gig. He looked up and said, "There go my friends," and it's widely assumed that a lot of people in the crowd also saw that. It was a flying disc. The cameraman actually fell over. There was one of the camera guys actually was looking up at it and fell over after spotting it, so it shows it was a definite thing, a definite solid object of some kind that went over. Here's Curtis Knight talking about it. It was an odd-looking craft that glittered in the bright sunlight. Jimmy felt certain the UFO had come down to put its spiritual stamp of approval on the show. He told me that he'd been emotionally and physically recharged by the experience. There's also this incident that happened in Woodstock in 1965. This is absolutely fascinating what happened here. Essentially, they were out in a blizzard, very, very cold weather. There was a freezing cold blizzard all around them, and there was a UFO landing that was witnessed by Jimmy, Curtis, and other people in the vehicle at the time. As I said, there was strong snow, and the car got stuck in a snowdrift on the way back to Manhattan. Very, very dangerous. And then they claimed that this bright cone-shaped object appeared. It was golden in colour, and it was kind of like an ice cream cone with some landing legs under it. And it came down and landed in the snow 100 yards in front of them, as Curtis talking about it. At first we thought it was an apparition caused by the cold and our confused state of mind. I mean, we just couldn't believe our eyes. I asked Jimmy if he could see it too. He didn't answer, but sort of smiled. He seemed to be staring out at the night, his eyes riveted on this thing resting within a stone's throw. Now, the door suddenly opened and this being came out of this object and started to head towards them. And they're sort of 8 foot tall. They had this kind of yellowish skin and these sort of large slit-like eyes. And as it came towards them, the snow around it seemed to melt away, so it seemed to be exuding heat. And the interior of the vehicle started to heat up, and they could see the snow melting off the outside of the vehicle as well. As Curtis again, as it glided behind our van, I saw the drift had completely vanished. Turning on the ignition key, I gunned the motor and got out of there. As I looked back through the rear view window, I could still see the road filling in with snow again. The object, the strange craft, was at the same instant lifting off like a rocket from a launching pad. Absolutely fascinating experience there. And as I say, there were multiple witnesses involved with this. And they believed that this being had saved their life, as in they would have frozen to death. And it actually saved them. Absolutely fascinating incident. Another famous guy here needs no introduction, of course, John Lennon. He and his girlfriend at the time, they had an incredible close encounter with a flying saucer on the 23rd of August in 1974. And again, this isn't widely publicly known about. And it was witnessed by him and his girlfriend May Pang, and they were in their apartment in New York and witnessed it from off the balcony at quite close proximity. Here's May talking about it. As I walked out onto the terrace, my eyes caught this large circular object coming towards us. It was shaped like a flattened cone, and on top was a large, brilliant red light. When it came a little closer, we could make out a row circle of white lights that ran around the entire rim of the craft. These are also flashing on and off, so quite clearly this thing was not a helicopter or standard aircraft of any kind. It was a drawing of the object. I did have a little interview with John. We'll skip past that again. Sorry. Nina Hagen. She's a German punk rock singer and actress. Not that well known, but she also filed a report on the UFO Info website for a sighting that she'd had in Malibu Beach in January 1981. I've got a little clip about it because obviously interesting to hear the details. Oh, I got no sound. Sorry.
Seen a UFO in Malibu.
Yeah.
How long ago was this?
That was when I was pregnant with Cosma, who is 4 years old now. That was in the middle of the night, and it was great. I was mesmerized. I couldn't think anymore, and it was a great feeling. And it was hanging right over me. It was the beach where Bob Dylan and Barbara Streisand also have their houses. The beach was overwhelmed by the ocean last year, and it was showing all kinds of colors, a real light show.
How big was it?
10 meters, big and round, and
glowing?
Glowing in different colors, yellow, pink, green, turquoise, and each color had another feeling, made me feel different.
Was it doing any hair extending? I tell you what, hang on a second, Nina, we'll be right back. We have to do a commercial, and then we're coming back.
So, of course, I joke in there about her experience and everything, but you can see there she's had a genuine experience that she's quite fascinated by. Another lady from the world of music, Helen Wheels. Who's familiar with Helen Wheels? Hands up. That's interesting. She's got a very interesting link, which we'll come to. So Helen was in 1976 to 86. She actually wrote the lyrics for the famous band Blue Oyster Cult, and she's also the vocalist for Helen Wheels Band and Skeleton Crew. She was also quite big into women's bodybuilding and held several titles in that. Now, interesting about Helen is she was a known abductee, and she openly spoke about this in numerous interviews and was working with the UFO community on her experiences to try to get to the bottom of them and understand them in more depth. And also, the other fascinating thing about Helen is she, believe it or not, is the sister of the famous ufologist Peter Robbins, who's one of the lead investigators into the Wrensham Forest incident. And there's a great picture of Peter trying to catch up with the mussels with his sister. Helen actually worked with the contact researcher Bud Hopkins, and had deceased real famous researcher there, and Pete Mazzola on her experiences. And she and her brother, Peter Robbins, were abducted from their front porch in Rockville Centre, Long Island, New York. Now, Peter doesn't talk about this incident that much, but he was involved directly with that experience, maybe indirectly as a result of his sister having the experience as well. Here's a quote from Helen about her experiences and the drawing she did. The aliens keep taking me for medical tests. I feel like a high school science project. Maybe I am, like a turtle we would tag. And she's drawn herself a classic abduction scenario there, with her lying down on a bench, surrounded by grey beings, and that was one of the drawings she did through working with Bud Hopkins about her experiences. She wrote numerous tracks themed on the subject. After having these experiences, obviously they would weigh quite heavily on her mind, including a track called "The Saucer Song." Then we've got Sting. So some really mainstream artists here. Some of the biggest artists in the world of rock music over the years have all had UFO experiences. He was a new wave rock musician and actor since 1978, of course, and he was also eager to find the truth behind UFOs. And again, like Reg Presley, very big interest in the crop formation phenomenon. His wife Trudy actually discovered a crop circle on their estate, quite a large estate, and they went out there one morning. Comes across a crop circle. And they also had a UFO sighting while they were on a skiing trip in Switzerland. Got a little miniature quote there. Said it was like the top of a mountain lit up like a Christmas tree. So it certainly sounds like a very impressive sighting. Not much more is known about that to any level of depth, not that I could find. I did go looking. Yeah, there's an interesting song that Sting released called I'm So Happy I Can't Stop Crying, and it's got a really great video with all sorts of really interesting imagery in it, including this cowboy-like chap lassoing this cow, and he's sitting on top of this silver disc-like thing and riding it sort of like a horse from the air. And also later in the song there's some line dancing greys you can see there, which is quite similar to the, if any of you know the Will Smith song Men in Black that he released after the film, where they linked it in with CGI and he was dancing alongside this alien. Well, yeah, Sting did it first with that one. So you got little cowboy hats on, kind of cute. Yeah, back to Tool, I did say they'd had some direct experiences, so let's have a look at what actually happened with those sightings. So here's a sighting they had in the Tekahipi Mountains in September 2000. Quote here from Blair. Danny and I headed up to the top of Mount Pinos with hopes of catching a glimpse of something. I'd been tipped off there was going to be a test flight of something from the anthill facility in the Tekahipi Mountains that night, using the meteor shower as a cover of sorts. About an hour before the sunrise, we observed two anomalous objects moving very rapidly across the sky. At first I thought these were satellites, but then one of the objects began to display some erratic manoeuvres before disappearing from view. The manner in which the object disappeared was its strangest feature. What these were, I'm not sure, but they definitely were not meteors, conventional aircraft, or iridium satellite flares. So these guys knew what they were doing. You know, they'd seen things under the skywatches. They knew what wasn't a UFO, and these things definitely weren't. So, but they couldn't easily identify them. I also said that Blair felt that he may have been an alien abductee, which is kind of an amusing statement here by him. I still get a little nervous being around pies of all varieties. This possibly due to the pie pan's resemblance to something I saw hovering over my backyard one night in the early 60s. Next thing I remembered, I was waking up in the morning with bloodstains on my pillowcase and the mental image of a big owl having been staring at me through the bedroom window during the night. 30 years later, with over 400 books on ufology lining my shelves, it's quite a collection, I still don't know what the hell happened. It's interesting that him mentioning the owl. Some of you who are interested in contact will know the Greys use something called a screen memory quite often to mask their appearance. David mentioned it earlier on with them masking the appearance of their craft. They can also mask the appearance of themselves, and there's many cases on record where they've appeared to people quite often younger when they're in childhood, and they'll appear in animal forms, and one of the most common animal forms they'll appear in is that of an owl. And if you think about a barn owl's face, it's white with the kind of black eyes, it looks quite similar to the face of a grey, so you can see how that link could come about. There's an open argument as to whether screen memories are something projected by the ETs or is something that the human brain is doing it directly, but it occurs so often, I would say it's probably the former of those things. I think they're masking on purpose to essentially reduce the fear and anguish of the situation that they're undergoing. But I'm digressing there. Let's get back on track. 21st of August had another sighting in 2001 at Area 51 itself. There's the famous sign there at the top right. Restricted access, no trespassing beyond this point, and they do mean it. You can actually watch videos online of what happens when you tread over the line at Area 51. You can see that on YouTube, and essentially they send out black helicopters and chase you down the road, and if they catch you, they will fine you a lot of money, take you down the police station and fine you thousands of dollars. They don't shoot you, but I guess if you carried on running into the base, they probably would. Here's a quote from Blair about this sighting. It's time to drive to the perimeter of the base to see if anything is going on. Having driven about 5 miles, we suddenly see something that causes me to slam on the brakes, and all of us shout out in unison, "What the hell is that?" This is a vividly glowing light, the predominant colours being the green and blue of a peacock's tail, only luminous like a plasma that becomes extremely bright. Whatever this was, it lifted off from the ground in the direction of the base, performing an extremely erratic manoeuvre before it quickly disappeared behind the ridge. The whole thing happened fast, and I've no idea what it was, only that it was not a flare or missile. However, it was as dramatic as anything I've ever caught or seen on videotape by people claiming to have filmed an alien or reverse-engineered spacecraft. An absolutely fascinating statement there. Robbie Williams. We return to the man, the myth, the legend that is Robbie Williams. And yeah, Robbie himself has had some UFO sightings, which may have led to his interest in the subject. There's a childhood sighting which is mentioned, but he's never really given that many details on that. He also had a square UFO sighting which took place at a Beverly Hills hotel. I was at the Beverly Hills Hotel and I was lying on my sun lounger outside at night looking up. There, about 300 foot above me, there was this square thing which just passed over my head silently and then shot off. He also had a golden orb sighting, which he claims happened around the time that he was recording Arizona. I'd just written this song called Arizona, and it's all about alien contact, and I was playing that. I stood on the balcony, and there was this big ball of gold light that turned up. We thought it was Venus or Mars or something. Then the song stopped playing, and it disappears. But then we put Arizona on again, and the ball turned back up. It happened 4 times. Yeah, interesting claims. So it's saying it seemed to be interacting with when he was actually playing the song. He had some lovely photos of Robbie there taken off the internet. They do love it. Yeah, there was a short interview with him. Unfortunately, we're running low on time, so I'll skip past that bit. In that, he talks about another very odd sighting where he said that this black strip, so some sort of flattened black thing, came in and flew past them through the studios and out the other window. Very, very interesting indeed. Basement Jacks are a electrical dance music duo from the UK, and one of them, Felix Burton, had a sighting in London in 2012. There's a little quote from him about that. So it was in the middle of the afternoon last April. I was having a cup of tea with a singer and we were chatting, and outside the window there was this thing hovering over London. The nearest thing it looked like was a flying saucer. It was the start of a new obsession. So off the back of his experience, he started to look more into the subject and has been interested in it ever since. It's great to think that, you know, that these UFOs can be seen directly over London. Saying that, I myself have directly investigated many cases from around Birmingham, some of them including landings and other fascinating events. So you just have to be in the right place at the right time with this stuff. We return now to Shaun Ryder, of course. And said earlier on, he had this childhood UFO sighting which took place at Salford and led to his lifelong interest in the subject. And the object performed these impressive zigzag manoeuvres. Have I got time to show this video? It's about a minute long, is that all right? Yeah. So it's just a nice little clip of him off Good Morning.
Before we get underway, this is a whole passion for you, right? So you hear your documentary, and the thing is, you're practicing what you preach because you believe you have seen UFOs.
I know I've seen UFOs,
right.
yeah.
Tell us when and how.
As a 15-year-old, I was on my way to, I was a messenger boy at the post office, just signing Official Secrets Act, believe it or not, Damon. And I was on the way to the bus stop. It was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and there was another little lad there walking to the bus stop. And we sort of looked up and we saw this thing just over it, and then it shot off, sort of stayed like that, and then shot off again, did this sort of zigzag, come back into, like, over the bus stop, stayed there for a few seconds, then shot off, and that was like 1978.
And what did you think? Did you think straight away at 15, that's a UFO?
Definitely, yeah. Well, I didn't think, you know, I mean, I've never, I mean, you know, I grew up near the airport, so I mean...
It's Manchester Airport we're talking about.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we didn't have a lot of helicopters flying about then. And no helicopters.
Were you scared or excited?
No, I wasn't then. I was just sort of looked and went, oh, right, okay. More like interested and curious, so I wasn't scared.
It's lovely to see his passion there for his experience, and you can see he's like genuinely excited by what he witnessed there. I was only 1 year old at the time. So yeah, we reached the end of the talk. So let's end with a few conclusions of what we've gone over. That sort of grey band there at the bottom. So yeah, UFOs and aliens are, as you can see, regularly used as a source of inspiration, not just in one genre of music, but across the board. And often that inspiration has come about from actual experiences, so the musician has an encounter and then feeds it into the musical output. And some believe that certain musicians have been directly influenced by ETs, as in indirect contact with them, or are even alien in origin themselves. And obviously there's evidence for and against those views. And UFO-themed songs, I would say, certainly play a part in the public's awareness of the UFO subject and will continue to do so. So there we go, there's some details about my group, Birmingham UFO Group. Our website, www.bufog.com. All the case reports of the cases I investigate go on there, and they're free for the public to digest as they will. We've got a Facebook group, Birmingham UFO Group, just type in for that, and also a community page on Facebook called BUFOG Truth Seekers, where we just regularly discuss the subject. So I hope you've really enjoyed my talk and found it very interesting and learned something new about UFO-themed music. I'm David Hodrien. Thank you very much for your time. Guys, I've got one more music video for you to end with. It's a lovely track by Cherish Alexander, an American sort of pop rock artist, and she's written an amazing song all about UFO disclosure called Need to Know. So I'm going to end my talk with this.
Friend
UFOs and the music industry. Thank you.